Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into a game that is literally pushing the boundaries of what virtual reality can do. We're looking at the brand new 1.0 release of Bootstrap Island, and let me tell you, we're going to unpack its incredibly uncompromising, highly physical VR mechanics. If you follow VR survival games, you already know the struggle, right? Finding a title that actually balances stunning graphical fidelity with meaningful physical interaction is like finding a needle in a haystack. Well, this Explainer is going to show you exactly how Bootstrap Island tries to crack that code. Picture this. You're Daniel, you're a 17th century merchant, and you are essentially living out a complete Robinson Crusoe nightmare in VR. You wash ashore after this brutal, violent shipwreck, and there is absolutely zero guidance. None. No glowing waypoints, no step-by-step tutorial holding your hand, no floating menus popping up to tell you what to do. You're stranded on this tropical island, and you're forced to rely entirely on your actual, real-life survival instincts to deal with wild beasts, nature's fury, and a mysterious local tribe. It's just a pure, unadulterated test of your ability to observe and adapt. And that brings us to Maru VR's core design philosophy, which perfectly captures what the community calls VRAF, virtual reality as reality. This is the idea where physical actions completely replace abstract buttons. If you want to accomplish something in this world, you actually have to physically do it with your hands. There are no UI shortcuts coming to save you here. So here's the agenda for today's Explainer. 1. The 17th century shipwreck. 2. Leaving early access behind. 3. The VR survival formula. 4. Quest 3 PC VR performance. And 5. The final verdict. Let's get right into it. Section 1. Leaving early access behind, the 1.0 release. So what did Maru VR actually deliver after 2 full years of community-tested development? Well, the 1.0 update is massive. We're not just looking at a few bug fixes here. This update basically turns a lonely, repetitive survival loop into a really dynamic, narrative-driven world. We get the actual conclusion of Daniel's story campaign, complete with cutscenes and voiceovers. Plus, there's this new local tribe. This adds some really complex social dynamics where you're using nonverbal communication and trading altars to build friendly or, potentially hostile relationships. On top of that, we get cool new tools like the talking stick and the wood sling, which is a deeply coveted item for managing your physical inventory, by the way, plus some seriously high-stakes combat additions like the Blood Challenger boss encounter and the introduction of the mysterious shaman character. But the crazy part? The game isn't just stopping at this March 2026 1.0 launch. Looking ahead, the developers have already mapped out Q2 2026, promising even more replayability. We're talking a brand new creature encounter, some really much-needed refined inventory management, and a whole new challenge mode. It's a pretty clear signal of their long-term commitment to sustaining this community way beyond just the launch window. Moving on to Section 2, the VR survival formula, physicality over menus. Now, the developers lean heavily on this really fascinating design philosophy called narcissistic injury. It's basically the golden rule that if an object in a virtual world looks like you should be able to interact with it, touch it, move it, break it, it absolutely must respond to your physical actions in a logical, physics-based way. Making sure your immersion is never, ever broken by fake static props, that is the entire foundation of how they built this world. Because surviving the night here isn't about just pressing X to magically craft a campfire. It is a literal, physical panic. As the sun goes down, you're plunged into terrifying darkness. You have to physically gather dry wood by hand, and yes, the rain actually affects the wood, making it too wet to burn, which is terrifying. Then you have to physically strike flint to create a spark. If you don't get a fire going, you will die. It is a brutal binary requirement for life. And once you finally have that fire, you literally have to swing your torch wildly to fend off the predatory beasts attacking you from the dark. Think about traditional survival games. You're usually relying on floating menus, button presses to reload, some kind of abstract crafting screen. But here, your hands are literally your inventory in the early game. If you want to reload your flintlock pistol, you are doing it physically, piece by piece, while under extreme pressure. It perfectly illustrates why this lack of guidance is a core design philosophy, not just some tacked-on difficulty setting. However, we do have to ask, does the 1.0 launch actually address those lingering frustrations from early access? Because while the physical interactions get a ton of praise, critics have definitely noted some issues. We're talking nighttime beasts sometimes glitching right into cliff walls and just disappearing at sunrise. Then there are the complaints about the cumbersome grabbing mechanics. The game uses this palm-facing gravity pole to pick things up, and honestly, it can feel super friction-heavy when you literally just want to grab a coconut. And, of course, there are the notable performance drops in those dense jungle environments. Which brings us to Section 3, Quest 3 PCVR Performance, Taming the Hardware Hog.
So it is absolutely essential to understand right off the bat, you cannot run this game natively on a Meta Quest 3. There is no standalone mobile version. Bootstrap Island is exclusively a high-end PC VR title, and they recommend an RTX 3080 graphics card just to run it properly. So if you're on a Quest 3, you're strictly using it as a wireless display, streaming the game from a massively powerful PC to your headset. But to overcome these massive performance demands, the community has kind of crowdsourced some ultimate problem solvers for the streaming settings. If you're on a Quest 3, jumping into Virtual Desktop on the VDXR runtime branch, combined with the AV1 10-bit codec, gives you the absolute best visual clarity in that dense jungle. On top of that, using synchronous space warp, or SSW, lets the headset generate intermediate frames, which really smooths out the experience. And crucially, players are reporting much better performance when they keep SteamVR closed entirely and just use the Meta runtime instead. 30. That is the extra frames per second boost players are reporting just by switching from standard SteamVR to that VDXR runtime branch. And guys, when you're literally fighting for your life against jungle predators in VR, a 30 FPS difference, that's not just a minor technical detail. That is the difference between an immersive survival experience and an unplayable, stuttering mess. All right, Section 4, the final verdict. Definitive survival or solid draft? So looking at everything, you're left with this really fascinating duality. On one hand, you have the definitive experience, stunning, lush visuals, unparalleled physical interactions, and a deep, dynamic ecosystem that is honestly a marvel. But on the other hand, it's incredibly performance-heavy. You've got demanding hardware requirements, some friction-heavy inventory management, and those lingering collision glitches with the AI enemies that can totally break your hard-earned immersion. Ultimately, though, it is a groundbreaking step for virtual reality as reality. It completely refuses to compromise its high-end vision for standalone hardware, even if those extreme performance requirements and occasional bits of jank keep it from total perfection. Which brings us to you. What is the VR survival mechanic that you want to see that no game has gotten quite right yet? Are we talking deeply physical cooking, completely freeform building, or something else entirely? Drop your thoughts on that question below. I always love seeing how this community envisions the future of the medium. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Until next time, keep exploring and stay curious.